first we'll move to Sarah. Sarah's going to be talking about agency. And so the book highlights how context shifts the landscape of activation, making certain thoughts more likely than others, which builds on Professor McClelland's previous point. If our minds are so dependent on external context to stabilize our internal thoughts, then how much agency do you think we actually possess independently of our environment? And Sarah, over to you.
Great, thank you. Let's first clarify agency as per Merriam-Webster, which is the capacity, condition, or state of acting or of exerting power or the ability to act or produce an effect. Yes, how we judge an experience depends upon the external context in which we judge things or experience things. External context is very important as it provides factors that guide our perceptions, interpretations, and emotions, reaching us closer to precision in achieving our desired outcome. The reality is that we do not need external context in an activation flow. In fact, our neural network treats it as just one input whose activation can be summed with other internal inputs activation, the sum of which is then weighted and evaluated against thresholds determined by prior activation potentials to terminate in an outcome unit. To state that our minds must have external context to stabilize our internal thoughts creates a rule. The problem with applying rules, like in a superiority effect, is that no matter what rules one specifies, there appear to be exceptions in which those rules are not followed. For example, in the superiority effect, when non-words are surprisingly and accurately used as input to identify letters and in the case of emotions, an emotion response unit can activate another emotion response unit without an emotion eliciting situation. In other words, external context. One can choose to smile even when there is nothing to smile about. And this mere act of smiling makes people feel happier even when there is nothing to smile about. This is anecdotally and lab proven. So the ability to choose gives us agency independent of our external environment.
Sarah, thank you. Jay, any reaction?
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because it's exactly reiterating all the points that I would make myself about the role of context and it's not. There's always a summation of influences, right? That's the fundamental idea. And so to say that this particular statement is not itself subject to being overridden by a constellation of other influences is exactly to make the key point of the entire book. So if I think about human agency, though, I think the question was a little different. I think the question you were really asking didn't fit the definition that she read from Merriam-Webster anyway. I think maybe there's another definition of agency which was intended. So let's see if we could agree about this. I think that we consider ourselves to have agency when we believe that we are acting in accordance with principles and goals that are dictated by a sort of a higher sense of intention. That is what I think is intended when we talk about agency. And I think that any person's ability to act in such a way, like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or someone like that, actually depends on the contextual support that those people were receiving from the various influences around them that made it so that they were in the right position to take those positions and exhibit those forms of leadership that they achieved. And if we don't recognize how important our contextual influence is on each other, we will not achieve a world in which we have people who are able to help us lead ourselves to a better life. So that's part of my overall point here. We want to be thinking that we have to be a mutually nurturing and supportive contextual body for ourselves and each other to live in a productive and safe world. And it takes a world. and that's our context.